on you and welcome to another episode of These Vampires Are Taking Over Our Lives and We Can Do Nothing About It. In today's episode, I'm going to be breaking down the Vampire Lestat episode 1 to 3, and I will be discussing the various aspects of the show that clicked for me, that I loved, that I was gagged by, that I couldn't have enough of, and well, let's say like the 1% of things that I really didn't like in the first and maybe second episode, I absolutely adored the third episode and I want more. So if you're anything like me and you like a slow burn, you like to be prepped, you like the foreplay, you like to be walked through things, I'm pretty sure you were very much confused by the pilot episode of the Vampire List that I was. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not going to hide. Pretend I was. I really enjoyed it. As at the time I watched it, I really didn't enjoy it. But since then, my feelings about that pilot episode has changed because I feel the third episode of the Vampire List that sets the proper stage for us to, just come along the journey of Lestat and feel the emotions and the chaos that he felt in the very first pilot episode. So let's talk about it. First and foremost, I'm just going to reiterate because I made a video that has come to my attention since then that it has been partially blocked in certain territories, and so not everybody can see it. I tried to take it down and take out the copyrighted materials within it. I uploaded it, and I had the same problem, and so I just made the previous video public anyways because I thought I'll just recap everything I said in the first review in this podcast. So you're not really missing out on much if you didn't see the first review that I posted. The vampire we meet at the beginning of the Vampire Lestat episode 1, is quite different. Well, not quite, vastly different from the vampire that we met in the previous two seasons of the show, and that could be that change and that drastic change was quite jarring. And we saw the vampire start in the previous two seasons, and we knew how chaotic he could be. However, without proper, like I said, without the proper context, his crash out and his outburst and his "Oh, I'm a rock star," vampire going on tour. I'm having a breakdown because a book is released. All of that felt like the vampire star was doing too much for the pilot episode because he was just a lot to take in the pilot episode, way more than we've seen him be this flamboyant, chaotic character in the first two seasons of the show. I feel that episode 3 recontextualizes everything and puts the pilot episode of the show into proper context. In fact, for a good viewing experience, I would recommend that anyone watch the third episode first and then continue from the first to second episodes because that's the order in which to me gives the maximum and optimum viewership experience. If you ask me, I would say that a proper foundation was laid. We got to meet the characters first. We got to understand a little bit about them, their backgrounds, and who they are, how they related to each other, particularly the meeting between Lestat and Daniel Malloy is one of the moments or scenes that I was looking forward to because Daniel Malloy was so fascinated by Lestat through the retelling of Louis and Armand and even Claudia, and he said verbatim that he couldn't wait to meet him, and so I genuinely was looking forward to the very first moment that these two forces of nature um came together and met for the very first time and what their first words were. towards each other. I knew for the vampire Lestat, he was fuming and he was curious and fascinated, but also angry at the fact that this is the man who ruined a potential relationship or reunion with Lestat, with Louis. And I know that he in a way was also curious and fascinated by what makes Daniel so special, that Louis would open up to him and confess his feelings. What is it about Daniel that had Louis so vulnerable and in his feels? You know what I mean? And I feel when we didn't get that in the pilot episode, I'm not gonna lie, I was thrown off because I was like, what is happening? Why did we miss such an important moment between these two characters? What are the writers doing? But at least with the third episode, we get to see a little bit of that, although it's also devoid of the the punchy moment or the punchier moments that I was looking for. This could suffice and did suffice in that, yeah, you did see who Daniel Malloy is and what he was bringing to the table and the challenge that he is going to throw for the vampire Lestat. And you could see that these two were in their elements and they were both, on the fence and ready to just fight it out in that studio. You just could tell that Daniel thought this was going to be an easy win, and the look on his face when he realized that the vampire Lestat was playing him for the fool all along, and he's met his match in the vampire Lestat. That is the kind of ants I'm here for. That is the kind of energy that aggressive energy that I am here for, because it's something that it did so well with the first two seasons of the show, and why Daniel Malloy was so loved by so many people, including myself, because he was that formidable human being in the room who could get up and slap Louis from across the room. Like he is not one to be trifled with, and I wanted to see that bit of him come out. Whereas in the pilot that we got, the episode one that we got, he looked like a background decoration to Lestat's story. He looked like he wasn't really relevant to the telling of the story, and he was just there chasing this flamboyant character who has this larger than life personality and is doing his shit. And I was like, yeah, Lestat, this is not going to be your world though. This story has done something so magnificent that it has built a world beyond Louis, a world beyond Armand, a world beyond Lestat, and has incorporated all these characters that are so well developed and established that we want to see more of. I was excited to see Dr. Farid make a comeback, because he listen, I am not here. That is my whole personality now. Like, if y'all want to run me a ticket, I am not here. My bills are due. I am not here. I didn't show up to work. I am not here. You feel me? The expansion of the universe and of the world is something that I felt was going to really make it difficult for Lestat to make this about him and his show, which is something that I felt in the first episode, was how claustrophobic that the whole episode felt. It felt as if we are being stifled, we are being shoved into this tiny box that is made up of Lestat, and we are not seeing the world that has been richly developed, you know, in this universe. For crying out loud, we rarely saw establishing shots, which I feel is like a very technical term to use, but it conveys the meaning that I want to convey. You barely see the bus moving, and like a point of view of this, the city, as the bus whips by. You barely see those establishing shots. Everything is shot indoors. Everything is shot. You know what I mean, from the stats point of view, the point of view of his bus, looking outside and not the outside looking inside. And those little bits were just so claustrophobic to me. and so annoying, and coupled with the fact that we were hearing his voice constantly narrating everything, and even to the second episode, which I enjoyed slightly more than the first. You could there was a scene where Daniel Malloy and Louis were having a conversation, and Lestat says, "Well, I can tell you this happened because I'm omniscient and I see everything." I'm like, "Bitch, shut up! You're stalking Louis. Just say you're stalking Louis, because at this point, why are you everywhere? Why are you everywhere? From the books, the only person that can be um everywhere is, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a character who's like the source and who can be everywhere, and I feel like that's too soon for you to be bringing that character into, the character of Lestat. Other than that, I'm just gonna say that, Lestat, you are stalking Louis, because how do you know that? And you are stalking, definitely stalking Malloy, and you are stalking Amand, because how are we seeing all these shots in real time while you are doing your concerts? How are you doing this omniscient thing? Like, it's not making sense to me, and that's what I'm saying. That there are certain things that they really could have done with. They could have sacrificed, you know, wanting this whole thing to be shot and explained and narrated through, Lestat as the overarching voice narrator, like we had for Louis throughout the first and second episodes. But I feel like with that, they found a way to broaden the horizon, broaden the universe a little bit by having Malloy read some of the diary entries, and having that back and forth interaction between, because that becomes a whole element of the show on its own. That interview aspect of the show was so fascinating and engaging. And we did have the Claudia Diary, which we heard in the voice of Claudia, and we also had Armand narrate his bits as well, and so it didn't really feel as claustrophobic. Whereas this, I don't know if it was intentional. If it was intentional, it was quite risky, because without it, like I said, without the proper foundation and context, this feels very claustrophobic to me, and I was scared that if we were going to get that for 7 episodes, then I we were cooked basically. Some of the scenes also felt very cheap to me. And I could tell, I don't know if it's just me. Well, it's not just me, because I've seen some people express their frustrations over that. But if you basically could tell where most of the budgets for the production went, and the difference was just staggering to me. It was just that such a stark contrast. You really could tell, for example, that a lot of money went into shooting the strip club scenes, shooting the wide view angle of um, Lestat and his mom when they were catching up and having a conversation, and Louis, Lestat was trying to establish boundaries with his mom with regards to the nature of their relationship and companionship. You could tell that most of the money went into those shots, and I was so frustrated because they were not necessary. Frankly, they were not necessary. That conversation that he had, outside with a mom just hanging out, that conversation could have happened in the strip club, and you could have just saved the money. It could have, you didn't have to go through all that. You know what I mean? Like, you really have her play with the robot thingy. You really didn't have to, you know, do all those shots unless you're trying to promote something. It wasn't necessary, because that conversation could have happened in the strip club, and I feel like, so what was the point of the strip club then? Because they went in there, they're hunting people, they have like a few lines, and that's it. You really could have made this a whole thing where the star and his mom in the strip club, and after Lestat says to the mom that we should have this companionship without a cum, and having her go ahead and kiss the stripper, that would have been an excellent shot. That would have made a lot of sense, in that we could tell, or we could infer from that, the mom's perception and ideology when it comes to intimacy, and things like that. And I feel like it was so not necessary. The conversation, when they're stalking the food, and I feel like that bit was very important. But again, like, just a few other scenes and scenarios that to me were well produced and well shot, and you could tell had a lot of it up the budget, were so not necessary. Like, you could have just um directed and invested that budget into other shots that really needed it. Okay, we really needed to see Lestat in Auvergne, in France when he was a child. We really needed to see him trying to join the theater. We really needed to see, the culture of, the village that he grew up in, the kind of environment, just as we saw Lestat in, what was the name of his city again? In New Orleans, Storyville, right? Storyville, and we could, the places take on characters of their own, and they add to the story and the atmosphere of the story. And we really didn't see Lestat's background in that way in the first um episode and the second episode. And when we did see them, it was just poorly, produced. Dare I say? I'm not gonna lie, that contributed to me feeling very frustrated with the first and second episodes that we watched. It was some of these scenes that were really not necessary. I feel like Rowling should have just killed his darlings, and concentrated, just tightened it up a little bit, because I get it, they felt more like fillers to me. And I was like, you've not given me anything, you know, you've not given me any meal. Like, why are you giving me the dessert? Why are you giving me the dessert? You know what I mean? And it just didn't make sense to me. Now, let's talk about the brilliance of the third episode, because I feel like when we hit the second episode and things start picking up for me, yeah, we are getting a little bit of plot, we are getting a little bit of background, and I screamed, I enjoyed it. I was severely gagged in the third episode, which, oh, let me talk about this, is the idea that this is a horror show. I feel one of the things that got me tuned in to the interview with the vampire, with the very first episode that I watched, the pilot episode that I watched, because I'd seen the trailers. I was like, yeah, I don't really care about that. You know what I mean? I don't really care about that. Meh, meh. But then one day I was just bored at home, and I decided to watch the pilot episode, and it was a go, 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 go. I was on AMC's channel. I was on all the sites. I was looking for links. I was like, where do I get this? Where do I stream this? Where do I buy this? I was on Netflix. I was searching everywhere for it, because I was like, well, I need to see the rest of the episodes. And it's that sense of gore, that grotesque feeling, that horror element to the show that got me sat real quick, particularly when we see a few minutes into the show, we see the vampire Lestat just mauling someone, eating them at night, and exhibiting his power in a way that got me. I was like, "Ooh, okay, this is a serious piece of art. This is a serious story. These vampires are scary as fuck." And I was tuned in. I clocked in. Okay, I didn't get that same I didn't get that same feeling with the the first episode that we had. Yeah, we could see, you know, the hotel scene where the vampires were attacking. It all felt very non-serious and goofy to me, but at the same time, I knew with the proper sound effects and with the proper, I would have been on the edge of my seat. You know what I mean? That editorial decision just pissed me off so freaking much. So freaking much. You have no idea how pissed off I was that we couldn't feel the weight of certain scenes. They were not landing the way that they ought to have landed. And I feel like that's because like I said, they skipped episode 3 and went straight into this pilot episode that I don't know what the intention was, whether it was to establish that this is a whole new show, a whole new vibe, but like scare me, please, scare the shit out of me. Let me scream, yeah. Let me hide under the bed. Let me fear for my life. That is why I enjoy Unwise, because this woman will make you feel like, being someone murdering you in broad daylight is a holiday treat. You know what I mean? The horror, like I'm here for a horror show. Where is the horror? And I'm not getting that in the first episode that I could see the fight and I could see all the stuff happening and people decapitating, but it wasn't punchy, it wasn't landing for me, and it was quite frustrating to experience. But that was not the case with the third episode. Even in as much as Lestat is trying to make a music video out of this traumatic experience, when you layer it with Louis reading the diary of Claudia and the look, listen, Sam Reed has a look that haunts me. And I thought at first it haunts me to this day. I I I need several weeks of therapy every single time I see that look on his face. And it's the same look that he gives us when he witnesses Claudia getting burned, you know, you know, Claudia dying, and it's instantly elevates the horror of the show for me. And I saw that same look when um Magnus mentioned Claudia in the car. I was re traumatized for some reason. Samri, please take it easy on me, okay? Yes, because that moment of Claudia burning on that stage is etched in my brain to this day, and I can't get over it because every time I think about that, I think about the look on Samrit's face, and I know if Anrise was alive, she would be traumatized the fuck by that as well. Oh, what an actor! Samrit is I don't know. These people are just some serious actors. I tell you. Another thing that stood out to me that I really didn't know how I felt about it was the whole vampire being so self-aware thingy that Lestat was exhibiting, that trait that Lestat was exhibiting in the very first episode. He felt very self-aware for me, and that that was a little bit confusing, because I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting if they should maintain this level of self-awareness, because one thing I got from the books is how sometimes these characters are not very self-aware. They're not aware of how their behavior is coming across. Lestat actually sounds like a Gen Zer. Like he sounds like a Gen Z vampire, and I say that to mean that he seems awfully he seems like a character that has been to therapy. He feels like a character that has read a lot about abuse and experiencing abuse, and what I mean. I feel like he's put in some work, or at least is very introspective in a way that Louis was introspective in the books. I feel like he is quite introspective and emotionally intelligent as a vampire, which again was a little bit jarring, but not in a negative way. It was just, it made me awfully self aware as well, because I tend to be very self aware in my day to day life. I just haven't experienced that level of introspection and, um, self awareness from a, a, another person, much less a vampire for that matter. I fell off my seat when he started calling out his group about how they were, deflecting because they had a great performance, and they were uncomfortable with how brilliant they were. I loved that. I'm not gonna lie. I really enjoyed. Listen, I even though there's something different about the first and second episodes, and I've talked extensively about that, I still enjoyed bits and pieces of the show. It's something different. It's unique, okay? It's just not clicked. Yeah. I think that's what's happening when you're watching the first and second episode. Something is missing, and it's not clicking. Things are not coming together. You know what I mean? They're not coming together in a way that you're used to. And when you get to the third episode, then it clicks. It clicks. I feel like that's the experience that most people are going to get if you're someone like me who like tension, who like drama, who like conflict, who likes horror. It's gonna click at the third episode, which is honestly something that I cried over, because I was like, listen, we have just 7 episodes. I don't need you, just taking your time to build, do all that in one take and keep it pushing. Like, just give me the plot. I'm here for the plot. Perhaps the final thing that I want to talk about is the stakes in the show. I feel like when you're watching the first and second episodes, this there are no stakes in the story. Most of the stakes are in the narration. They're being told to us that, oh, there's a book and and you know what I mean. And it's like, yeah, but it's just petty. It feels like you're watching a reality show. You're watching Housewives of Beverly Hills or something, and or you're watching Love Island, and it's more so about the drama between the couple. You know what I mean? But the show is more than that. You know what I mean? Like, the show is really more than that. It's about high stakes. It's about the horrible things that happens in the, you won't believe it. If you see this first pilot and I show you the episode in season 2 where Claudia dies, you won't believe it. You tell me, what the fuck how are those two the same? You know what I mean? You wouldn't believe it. Like, it's that serious, guys. Interview with a Vampire is that serious, okay? It's really a horror show. And when you're watching the first and second episodes of the show, you really don't get the sense that this is a horror show. And the horror that, you know what I mean, is just being weaved and beaded, in a way that is slow and confusing and all over the place. And for me, I feel like it wasn't terrifying. I wasn't terrified by the first episode. I could have been, okay, if they had, put so much weight on certain moments that happened within the show, but I wasn't, because they didn't. And I feel like the horror aspects, it's introduced in the first episode, towards the end of the first episode, by the presence of Lestat's mother, Gabriella. And yeah, maybe I want to talk a little bit about Gabriella. I I, like I said, watch the third episode. I keep repeating this because, guys, it is that serious and it did have that impact on me. Watch the first episode where you meet Gabriella, the third episode, sorry, where you meet Gabriella and you don't know who she is and she's just a character in the background, akikiking over things that Lestat is doing and Lestat is having it. It's satisfying to watch it. I literally actually loved her so much, 100% in the third episode when she's in the background and she's, having sex with her son's look-alike. And, I feel like that subtle hint at, something could be off about Gabriella when she's staring intensely at the screen when the star is talking about his mother. That intense look makes a whole lot of sense if this was the very first pilot. Okay, because now she's on the edge of her seat. She's wondering if her identity is going to be revealed. Why the fuck is, if she's the mother, why the fuck is she sleeping with someone who looks like her son? That's fucked up, yeah? And I feel like if the revelation that they are actually doing it as we saw in the episode one, if we had seen that at the end of episode two, I feel like everybody would have screamed. I would have shouted. I would have been like, "Holy shit!" Because, like I said, the foundation has been laid. The setup is there for that moment to hit, and it would have hit so much. Nonetheless, I actually love what they're doing with Gabriella. I I didn't understand why they had to rush to reveal the fact that she is, I feel like all that was rushed. Um, the whole, that's the mom and that whole bit was, to me, rushed. Shouldn't have been in the pilot. Should have been in the second episode. Um, that said, I actually enjoy. I like what they're doing with her. I feel like this is only going to get better over time. I'm getting that feeling now that no, this show is actually going to get better over time. However, I'm also worried that they're going to gloss over certain things and not put the budget where the budget needs to go. Do y'all need a manager? Because I will gladly manage y'all for y'all. I would do that for you. And yeah, I when she turns up in a show, I feel like that psychological horror is there. The thought of the mom, abusing the child is horrifying in of itself. And I feel like that horror element is introduced by Gabriella and it's introduced by Magnus when Magnus returns. But I feel Magnus just takes the cake. You know what I mean? Magnus just takes the cake and um makes you wonder how they are going to up their game from here. What other terrifying things should we look forward to? Because I feel like you've rushed to give us Magnus and you've glossed over certain things that would have, made it very truly horrifying. And we are in the third episode, and now I'm like, okay, what do y'all have up your sleeve? I know they have something up their sleeve, but at this time we've exhausted most of the points in the books. And I'm like, hmm, I don't trust Roland. Roland, I know you have something up your sleeve. You're making me anxious. You're setting me up for something. I don't know. This is a horror show. Bring the horror, is what I'm saying. And before I forget, I need to talk about the production quality of the music that Lestat performs in the show. I feel like most of the budget went into that, and it's actually one of the contrasts I noticed in the first the pilot episode that we got was how well produced the music production was, the stage work, the You know what I mean? It felt like, oh, a lot of the budget went into building the stage and everything in the present time, and we didn't get the same budget allocated to open his village in France. I wanted to see how people in France looked like at the time. I wanted to see. Oh, that brings me to a point. How did I forget this point? Sam Reed looks heavenly in period pieces. Hands down, one of the. He has the face for it. He has the height for it. He has the hair for it. He has the looks for it. And he has the charisma and the character, the accent, the voice, the facial expression. When this man saw Nicolas Delenfant and he looked at him, he didn't need to tell me he was feeling that man. He didn't have to tell me that shocking caught his attention. I knew from the last in his eyes. Okay? I knew from the way the muscles in his face relaxed. Ah, what an actor! What an actor! Guys, if you leave me, yeah, I am going to praise the actors of Interview with the Vampire and the Vampire Lestat. I am going to praise Gabriella's performance. I love her in present day. I love her wig. I love her makeup. I love her ruthlessness. I want to see her eating some babies on the show. Okay? I want to see her do something truly diabolic to somebody else and not her own child. To somebody else and not her own child. Yeah. The costume. When we had a shot of the start going to his mansion, wherever he lived, going to turn his mom because the mom was not feeling well, was dying. The costume he wore and the way he looked was so delicious, so fantastic. Oh, oh, we talk about Nola Louis. I feel like we need to talk about France, period France Lestat, because post turning Lestat, when he starts glowing up with those vampire juices in his blood, okay, trauma becomes him. Trauma becomes him because why was this man looking fine as hell in those costumes? I loved it. And when he went to kill his family, when he went to kill his family, even though I feel like they were assholes and but they didn't really deserve to die, you know what I mean? Like I've thought about killing my own family a few more times, and yeah, maybe there was a part of me that really enjoyed seeing that it was cathartic. I, I got the tingles from seeing that poetic justice on the screen. I feel like what was the worst thing that they did though? You know what I mean? Why did they have to die? If you're killing these people over bullying you, you can't survive in America, honey. Like, and let me also talk about how if this is a man who has literally murdered his entire family, killed his brother, killed his own brother, and watched his mom murder the the Louis. It makes a whole it makes a whole lot of sense that Lestat was so pissed off sitting at a table with Louis and his family and brother, watching his brother abuse Louis because of his mental illness. Whoa. Listen, Lestat. Like, I keep, I remember saying this to someone in one of the comments somewhere prior to the release of the show that with Lestat, his thing has always been he's not going to do the monstrous thing for for Louis. And a lot of people were saying, well, yeah, he didn't defend Louis against racism, and he didn't defend, he didn't stand up to. And I was always of the view that he didn't need to do that though, because at that stage, Louis, you were a monster too. You are not going to defer that to another monster. He did not kill his father for his mother. Hmm? Hmm? He didn't. He didn't. Okay? He only went for people that really abused him. And then when we talk about the irony of him murdering his family and his children, Louis and Claudia murdering him, that's that poetic irony and that literary symmetry is just mwah, is just chef's kiss, and I enjoyed seeing that. This is almost 40 minutes long. I'm going to end today's podcast here. I have several notes. I have several notes on this, and I'm going to talk about it. Today is a Saturday. I'm waiting for the release of the fourth episode, and I'm going to come back with my thoughts because I have a lot to say. See you in another podcast. Bye.